and you've got something that I'm not sure I knew the name of before, CoCo?
Yeah, CoCo is contingent convertible. I'm going to call it a derivative, even though there's even a debate about that.
Yeah.
One of the things, David, to really focus on here is you have them in Europe. You don't have them here. That in itself is an interesting issue right now. Let's go to the morning must-read. This goes back to 2013 and the definitive primer on this by the Bank of International Settlements. The only one on the planet that's read this primer note to note is Mohamed El-Erian. Private investors are usually reluctant to provide additional external capital to banks in times of distress. We know that. CoCos offer a way to address this problem. CoCos can absorb losses either by converting into dilutive equity or by suffering a principal write-down. And that goes up, Mohamed, to the many T decisions that are out there right now for Mr. Cryan. One of them is a good old all-American cash call, except it's all European in this case. Can they go out and raise more money right now if they need to?
It's going to be hard. I think they can if they're willing to pay 300, 350 basis points, but I'm not sure they want, because that's going to reprice the whole yield curve. I think they're going to try and navigate that with what they have.
And within the degrees of freedom that they have a lot less here with the stock coming down yesterday, rallying, coming down again in the headlines moments ago. Do you have in your head a price point where Deutsche Bank has to go to Bundesbank or ECB and just say this isn't going to work?
I don't, but I think it's important that we're going to have a real test of the capital structure. So thank you for bringing up the CoCos. Remember, in the old days, it was equities, bonds, and then deposits. And the threat was always that you'd get up there too quickly.
Yeah.
So the idea was, let's have a cushion that absorbs the loss as you go up. And let's make sure that the loss doesn't migrate all the way up that quickly. Now we're going to have the test of that. And it's going to be really important to see how CoCos are priced. The one thing that encouraged me, Tom, is when Matt put up the numbers, we're seeing differentiation in Europe. Yes, Deutsche is trading at 242 basis points, but you know what? UBS is only at 86 basis points.
I'll go with that.
And that's really important that the markets are still differentiating between the banks.
But hold on a second. When you think about Deutsche Bank and these CoCos, yes, we're going to be okay for 2016. That's the message from John Cryan. But then we've got 2017 to worry about. You know, it's not like this is an overnight problem solved. They've got long-term issues.
Yeah, I think it was a really good point. UBS are ahead of the rest of them in this journey, also have the best wealth management. So Credit Suisse are probably in a better position than Deutsche. It will take Deutsche longer to get there. They have to get their risk-weighted assets down and sell what they can, basically. But I agree with Mohamed. I don't think they'll go out and raise more money.
Then hold on. Deutsche sold their private client services business in the U.S. to Raymond James, while every other bank is making a push saying private wealth is the place where we're going to feel cushion and growth. If you're DB, what are you going to do? What's your growth strategy?
Well, I don't think you want to be. I think Deutsche felt it was difficult to be in wealth management in the U.S. And probably felt it was better that Raymond James were in it. They're going to try and build wealth management globally, basically. But I do think there is a difference between Credit Suisse and where Deutsche are at the moment.
Mohamed, I want to come back to these CoCos. As Tom says, we don't have them at least yet in the United States.
We're not going to have them.
But TLAC goes in that direction. The reason why CoCos exist is actually to absorb risk, reduce risk. And yet, ironically, there's almost like a run on Deutsche Bank right now on its creditworthiness because of CoCos.
Right. Well, CoCos have a cliff. The minute you have a cliff in any instrument and you get close to the cliff, then you start causing these technicals.
Let's look at the cliff. David, I want to show the cliff here. Bring in the chart right now. This is one of the charts we used on surveillance this morning. I need a massive thank you to John Glover off our London desk and Michael Moore in New York for making me smarter on this last night. Here's a CoCo out 6 standard deviations, and down we go. And Mohamed, as you do so well with the language of game theory, it's about stalling and measuring time until you get to a jump condition. Are we there now? Is this the jump condition where not only derivative strategies click in, but management strategy has to change?
Hold on, derivative strategies click in. It's credit derivatives that are exaggerating this situation because they're pushing out so much. I mean, you got speculators playing there.
So for the last 6 months, you've heard me say there are 3 unhinged sectors in the global markets. One was energy, and we're continuing to see unhinged. 2 was high-yield bonds. And 3 was emerging market currency. Tom's question is critical. If banks become unhinged, then we are in a completely different place. I don't think that's going to happen, but I would keep an eye on it every single morning.
And one thing that's so important here, David, is Deutsche Bank is a national institution. Hans Nichols was brilliant from Berlin about the unique calculus here, cultural calculus, almost cultural finance. I've never used that phrase. I've never used that phrase in my life. It's almost a cultural finance. Write that down, Mohamed.
But Tom, could that be the reason maybe Deutsche was overprotected over the last 5 years? Many analysts said, I'm not going to look at DB or even invest because the amount of bad assets they could have on their books that are kind of hidden and wedged that other banks had exposed is a different picture.
The most important moment in the crisis for me was Senator Shelby with the papers in his hand on the White House driveway outside the West Wing, screaming about what we were going to do. The answer is we did. Europe didn't. That was a distinctive feature.
Martin?
I think Deutsche is pretty sound, actually, and at the end of the day, as you quite rightly say, it's a German national icon. So, and I think John Cryan's doing all the right things.
All right.
Under promise, over deliver.